Can't get out in comfy,
Barbecue,
uh,
not
do
comfortable
it
barbecue like.
outside, but tastes good.
It will still need some barbecue sauce. Probably New Year's, it'll probably be better. But peace and love, everyone. As you can see, I have Judge Joe Brown here, who needs no introduction. Of course, we know about his time as far as on the syndicated show, Judge Joe Brown, but also with his bout in politics in Tennessee. So we're just going to have a conversation tonight about everything that's going on with Trump and then get a little bit into FBA. But how are you doing tonight?
I'll manage. It's cold out there, like we were talking about earlier, but I'll survive, you know.
Yes. And stay warm in the house and be bundled up. By the way, have you been looking into getting back in politics at all now that everything has
No,
been going?
I never left politics. I always like to cause a bit of discomfort amongst those who deserve it.
I
I'm an
understand.
advisor and a consultant for a number of people. Might run again myself. Some people
That's what
trying to
I wanted
talk
to
me
ask
into
if you were
running
going to
into
run
Shelby
again.
County mayor. Yeah.
Oh, nice. You should. You
So,
should think about running again.
well, the last time I ran, they ran somebody else's picture. There was another Joe Brown who was a county clerk. They ran his picture on a local daily newspaper and one, two, three, four of the local TV stations for the last 5 weeks before the election and wouldn't take my ad dollars. So, hey, they didn't want me. And now it turns out what I was talking about was right. And a whole lot of people ought to go to jail for stealing the taxpayers' money. But that's
Yeah, because
another
you did it
question.
during Joe's, right? During Joe's presidency when you went for mayor. So there's a lot of Democrats that didn't like you very much, right?
Jackass in chief. Plantation boss. He counted on his Negroes. They's quite loyal, they is. Yes, ma'am. Now, what are we going to deal with today?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about FBA. As you know, there's a lot of controversy surrounding a group that is coming out. They are trying to be in the political sector, and really, their foundations is with reparations. We started with Claude Anderson and have gotten to this point. But my first question for you is, since we talked before, and you talked about when you were a student, how you pushed Black at the student union to take over Negro. When you're seeing FBA, do you see some of those initial what the students were doing in that movement as far as to
No, I
push
don't.
Black?
I don't. I don't. I
Okay.
see plantation Negroes, and I refuse to use the other harsher N word at all, except in the most derisive circumstances. But anyway, I see plantation Negroes who don't understand what they're doing, and essentially they're doing a colored edition of we came over on the Mayflower, the slave ships, so to speak, before anybody else did. So I think they have a problem with other people of African descent who came over here on their own to take advantage of the prosperity that the FBA crowd can't seem to deal with.
When you say
Man
the
thing says man
prosperity
up, do up,
means
step up, get up, and do what you got to do. Just get the hell out of our way and we can do it ourselves. Don't need any help. But they seem to think that somebody's supposed to open the kibbles and bits for them, or there's this big excuse, which throughout human history, prehistory, mankind has not existed without having to confront adversity, either from the environment, the animals in it, or other people in it. So get ready for it. Just learn how to deal with it.
Well, when you say the prosperity and the FBA having a hard time dealing with the prosperity, do you mean kind of when it's coming to looking for reparations or being active in other ways politically, that they're not stepping up to the plate, or do you see them stepping up to the plate politically at all?
Well, they have representatives, but the representatives are more rainbow than they are black, and they appeal to elect me because I'm black this, I'm black the other. But what they're really doing is saying, hey, I want to sneak in because of the rainbow situation. So that's a new theology like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever you may want to pick, except it has no deity, but neither does Buddhism either, which is an ancient and honorable religion. This is a theology based on failure, ineptitude, lack of bravery, courage, morality, ethics, personal dedication, accountability, and believing that one should be helpless with some kind of big brother slash tranny big sister taking care of you. So it's a sick thing and it doesn't work well in the world.
Do you think when it comes to the rainbow, because we kind of talked about this before, and even like the reparations that they've been able to pass and push through, do you think that's just something that we're always going to have a problem with, of them trying to overshadow Black political movements with the
No,
LA?
it's just when black Americans act like American Negroes off of the plantation and have devout, unquestioning loyalty to a party, to their former slave masters. Um, you can't get anywhere because your objective is to be a loyal dog and snug the collar around your neck and wait for the leash to get clipped on so you can get exercised and walked rather than doing it for yourself and understanding that your obligation is to advance your own interest, not be dedicated and loyal no matter what to some particular party. And that, by the way, make sure circumstances ever easy for everybody concerned. They don't have to give a damn about you because they know that you're going to be loyal to one party no matter what, and they don't have to do anything for you. They can still count on your vote, and another party can do all of what they might do to give you a long run solution, but you're going to run against them because they're not the party you're loyal to. And the party you're loyal to no longer can take advantage of King Cotton, but they take care of Queen Rainbow, Tranny Queen Rainbow.
When you see Jasmine Crockett that's coming to try to run for the Senate, and I know we talked about this, you don't think she's going to do well, but do you see her being more on the alphabet side, or is she going to be pushing
Yes.
more of the immigrant side?
Yeah, she went to Cecil B. Rhodes College here in Memphis, Tennessee, a small private college, after going to a $35,000 a year finishing school when most of us would have been going to high school. So, like St. Malcolm X said, a processed head equates to a processed mind, shows and reflects a processed mind. And she's got the fry job, the wig on her head, the Davy Crockett coonskin wig hat, and the barn door eyebrows, the eyelashes that she flaps around. And she tries to act like she's street and she's about as boule as she can be. And her daddy was a big time preacher. So, anyway, it's a whole fake show. And I would bet on the snowball surviving hell before she would wind up getting elected senator in the state of Texas. It's a way
Right.
of
Fingers.
keeping her brand alive, though, which is not unusual.
Yeah, because there is such a, I would say right now, the greatest push against the Democrats from our community. Of course, there's a lot of different groups, not just FBA, but just a lot of different groups in our community now that want to see change, want to see something happen. But I did want to get back to the FBA and something you said as far as like judging the Africans or anything. I noticed it's a lot of but we did see a lot of pushback from them of saying we don't have culture, we don't do anything, and a lot of misrepresentation of our culture while they're coming over here kind of on our back. So do you see like where that kind of
They have
pushed
about
off
they
on the
have
FBA here?
they have valid points. The other thing was they never were enslaved. They might have been subject to colonial exploitation, but they never got made real slaves. And that's an onus that it'll take a long time for Black America to get over. Some did their part. At the end of the Civil War in 1865, one third of the Union Army was Black. So some did their part, but some weren't there. Walt Disney, that does so many Black oriented movies these days, like Black Panther, part one and two, which is the highest grossing superhero franchise of all time, basically driven by American Negroes, had famously a series called Uncle Remus that made some technical innovations. It had real live people and cartoon characters in the frame at the same time. Uncle Remus was an interesting character. There was Burr Rabbit, Burr Bear, and Uncle Remus was famous for singing zippity doo dah, zippity day, my oh my, what a wonderful day, plenty of sunshine hidden my way, zippity doo dah, zippity day. And we had to learn that in elementary school, by the way. The interesting thing about Uncle Remus was he was an upset former slave Negro who was angry that the Union had invaded the South and set him free so he could no longer be taken care of. He had to take care of himself. And so many of what purports to be out there, Black leadership, reminds me of Uncle Remus. The word should not be Uncle Tom, it should be Remus.
Right, Uncle Remus. Uncle Tom was the good one. Someone did have a
No, not
question,
the
and I
good one. It was just he was in a situation there wasn't much gonna good happen to him. And Uncle Tom's cabin was just sort of a reflection on the fact that around and about the cabin where this guy lived, a whole lot of things took place that uh, gave excellent stand ins for aspects of slavery. This was something that was pushed by the abolitionists, and the book Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe is one of the driving engines that promoted the eventual Civil War.
yeah, and speaking of more of the juxtaposition to Sambo and how he ends up getting the Sambo rap, where we call everybody Uncle Tom's, but it's Uncle
By
Tom
the
that was
way,
really the slave trying to buy his
Little
way out of
Black
slavery.
Sambo wasn't an African.
What was
What was
Sambo?
it? What was it he was chasing around the tree or was tracing around the tree? It was a tiger. Little Black Sambo was a Hindu, low caste Hindu, like Kamala Harris was not an African, but you see, we transposed the whole thing. Little Black Sambo was an Indian from India.
From East India. Is that based on the East India Company or any real
No,
history
well, it
that
was
based
East India Company. Anything that was near that was near East Asia, and it was known as East, but East India Company was a semi-private entity that was set up to represent the crown and the English government to exploit in resources in the Indus River Valley, aka India. A lot of people became filthy rich. But little black Sambo was not an African, he was an Indian. Indians tend to be dark, and it shows another thing that too many of
Right.
our ignorant people focus on is mythology. You've heard of the Aryan Supermen, the Supermen from the
Yes.
far north that were supposed to be the ancestors of the Germans and the master race. Well, there are in the Aryans, but they're known as Indo-Aryans, and they are typified by little black Sambo, Hindu-based Indians were Aryans. Kamala Harris, according to her father, is an Indo-Aryan, which is an anthropological technical term. So, see,
Yeah, I
we
knew
have the wrong
from
idea.
actually Hitler talking about that, but I've never heard of it from that aspect of like
Yeah,
Hindus.
he lied to to the German people. See, he and his minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, they had a truth that still applies. You tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and often enough, and you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe in it devoutly. So we have a lot of lies that we have accepted as fact, and the Germans needed something because when they came up with it, they weren't but 35 years old as a country. That's not very long to be in existence.
Right.
They
So they
had
need
just become a country in 1872, finalized, firmed up 1876. They had their new emperor slash king, the Kaiser Wilhelm the First, was sworn in Versailles after they'd whipped up on the French in the Franco-German War in the 1870s.
wow. So getting back, I did want to ask a question. Someone asked, "What would you define black?" But I also want to know, what do you define as like black and Black American? How do we define that?
It's a mindset, and that's how it defined it. It's a positive assertment of personal and collective authority, black power. I'm black and I'm proud. Get out of my way and we'll do it myself. Don't need no help.
Mhm.
That was the thing back in the 60s. James Brown did a record on it, or well, recording on it.
Yes, I'm
So
black and
that
I'm
was one of
proud.
the,
But
well,
isn't that part of the delineation movement, kind of not necessarily putting any one other group down, but just wanting to be our own specific group that's recognized
no,
for
it
our.
wasn't to be their own specific group. It was to be part of the bigger one. There's no way to geopolitically escape being a citizen of the United States. It was being like an Italian American, an Irish American, a Jewish American, a German American, a French American, an Anglo American, Black American, where you are an American, and what winds up happening is the adjective is the designator, and that is you're Black, you're Italian, you're Irish, you're English, but some people want to be Negroes, American Negroes, and the noun is the Negro part, and it's not a description. It becomes a thing. And unfortunately, that's bad because it's something that has been put in people's heads through conditioning. It's acculturation and socialization that has led to massive dysfunction. I've seen it develop from start to current state over the last 50 some years. I heard people around this country plotting on how to do it 50 years ago, and they did it very efficiently. They captured the communications, entertainment, and news industry. And they had everything they needed to get the former slaves to easily lapse back into the methodology of their slavery under the old slave masters, the Democratic Party, which was chartered back in the second decade of the 19th century for the specific purpose of protecting and spreading slavery. It's interesting enough that in the early 1850s, the charter was applied for in 1851, and the Republicans had its specific points of their charter, the ending of the spread and the destruction of slavery as an institution. So I find it very interesting that so many American Negroes are so devoutly captured in enthusiastic subjects of the party that was created to keep them slaves. King Cotton is no longer there, but Tranny Queen Rainbow is. So they don't have any crops to grow, but they have a cause to push.
And I agree.
Tragic.
And I think that's where a lot of people are not believing in the Black Caucus at all. Like, how do we hold our political figures that we have right now accountable with where other people just want to just throw it all away and start over?
Turn the treasonous asses out of office. Their party emblem is a jackass, and they match up to the specifications of jackasses. You have quite a number of American Negroes in the Black Caucus, certainly enough to have a sufficient impact on American politics and government. So let's go back about 5 years. They had 2 weeks worth of hearings on whether or not to have a study of Black reparations. Now, it went nowhere, but 2 weeks later, the Black Caucus helped introduce what's known as the Gay Reparations Act, which was passed on the first voice vote without debate to give gays reparations. It was chunk change, just $58 million in insurance benefits to gay couples who had been denied because it was same sex marriage that was involved, and that's chump change in the government. So it's open ended though, and we've got it over 100 some million, several $100 million right now that's been spent out. But they didn't have any problems with that, but not one of them has introduced anything to deal with reparations. They're just running game on you because they know they can attract the foolish who will deal with imagery with rhetoric rather than substance. It's an old political trick.
Right. To kind of we're wanting to hear what you're hearing that we want to hear. So as a
Mm-hmm.
community, we should give up on reparations right now and move forward with like maybe Ice Cube's type of idea of a platinum plan? Or where do you think we should stand politically when it comes to who we're trying to align ourselves with?
Do you honestly think that a core group that put you in slavery a long time ago, exploited you, started the Civil War to keep you slaves, dealt with the Klan, White Citizens Council, Jim Crow, segregation, and then resistance to integration, which was now being badmouthed on cue by the Negroes. Um, do you think the party behind that is honestly going to give you reparations, especially when you are now about to become not the number one minority in the country, but a fourth or fifth place minority, with there being no majority in the country in about 10 years. I hear this also, some of the things we push, which are basically going along with there's got to be an easy way so we don't have to do anything and it's given to us. And remember, something that's given to you can be taken away. But we have this idea that somebody's supposed to take care of us because they owe us something. Whether or not they do, the problem is that if you get trapped in that, you become helpless. And to get out of it, what are we talking about? We need to get vocational skills and focus. Well, yeah, but there's this thing called artificial intelligence based on large language models. So the computers can do their thing about analyzing a lot of stuff and start acting like they can think for real. And they are going to replace most vocational skill tracks in the next 5 to 15 years. So you're saying get involved in and it already mapped out end game that's not going to be good for you. So if you want to be part of the 21st century, figure out what's going to be part of the 21st century. We've already finished the first quarter of the 21st century, about to get into the second quarter. And it would behoove anyone to understand that they're going to have to do a lot of hard work, as has anyone who has been successful, if they wish to succeed and have a certain level of prosperity. So it's time to start doing those things that allow you to manipulate, control, direct, build, and design the new technologies. So we need to start pushing that intellectual game, that academic game, rather than trying to take the easy way that somehow or another we're going to grow some fruits and vegetables. And that isn't going to work because humans haven't been isolated since the last ice age, height of the last part of the last ice age, about 25,000 years ago. So don't dead end yourself. And remember, go check out James Brown. You can get it uh, online.
Well, I
I
definitely
don't need
agree.
you to
I
do
think
nothing.
one
Just get
thing
out the
that's
way. I do it
powerful,
myself.
right? I think that one thing that's powerful with us coming together as Americans to say, hey, we've been here from the beginning and we're Americans, is that this when it comes to even STEM or the direction that we're going, because of the fact that we've had the Biden administration that had 11 million immigrants coming in 2024 alone. And sometimes they like to see it just like the Hispanic immigrants, but not even think of the East Indian immigrants or all these other people that are taking jobs. I know that was one thing that majorly Trump would say, them taking the jobs, and then they thought that it was just fast food jobs, but they have taken a lot of STEM jobs when it comes to us needing to learn it, of course. But if we're learning it and they have immigrants already taking it, then what's the point?
Yeah, that too. And see, the other thing is we live in an integrated society now. Go look at downtown Manhattan, downtown Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. If I'm not mistaken, American Negroes are not the only thing you see walking around on the streets. So they have opened the borders and let in Al Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Iranians, North Koreans, some Chinese from the People's Republic and other places that hate our guts and don't have B 52s, B 1s, B 2 bombers, F 22s, F 35s, FA 18Es, et cetera, M1A1, A3, A2 SEP tanks, and M2, M3 Bradleys. They don't have those, but they were allowed to walk in without even being inspected or their baggage or carry materials being checked, with backpacks full of military grade explosives, detonators, so they don't have to do the kamikaze suicide bombing thing anymore. They can plant it. It's already planted, I'm sure, the explosives, and they're waiting their orders, and they'll detonate the charges from 2 miles away and walk away grinning about it. And see, that's in. We've got 35,000 known convicted sex offenders, quite a few thousand who are known to be infected with or suspected of being infected of incurable forms of highly virulent tuberculosis, of people who have been convicted of various and sundry homicides to the extent of somewhere between 20 and 30,000. We've got several million suspected or known members of Southern hemisphere cartels
So is it
who
okay
are,
for us as Americans to say, hey, we need to delineate right now? We need to
yes,
be
it
a
is.
specific American group?
Yeah, look at the white people. Didn't they do that amongst themselves? You ever seen gangs in New York?
Right,
Who's waiting on the
exactly.
docks to jump? Who's getting off the boat? There's white folk getting off the boat and white folk on the docks getting ready to jump them.
Exactly. So when we go back, I do want to talk to you about this African descent state of mind versus us being like we built America and we have claims to it. What is the real benefit that we've had over the years from feeling like we're African descent, and how has it really helped us at all when it comes to our state here in the US?
The truth of the matter is every single human on this planet originated in Africa ancestry wise. Some went to Europe and got mighty pale. Some went to Asia, got yellow. Some came across the Bering Strait and got red. Some came back around and got brown, but everybody came up out of Africa. So all humans on this planet are African in origin. So it's kind of a real weird thing. It's who had the balls and the fortitude to migrate to better places, sometimes harsher places, but places that offered opportunities. And that's the name of the game. People spread from East Coast to West Coast. They took covered wagons. People spread in ships around the world. People did a lot of things. They tried to open up trade with Asia. There's Marco Polo, all of that 9 yards worth of history, Christopher Columbus, there's Francis Drake and so on, who was a pirate. Actually, he had a letter of marque from Queen Elizabeth, and I think he was sticking her because she was supposed to be the Virgin Queen, but I don't believe it. And, a lot of these guys did stuff. Sir Walter Raleigh was one of the first to bring in slaves, and, he was a British admiral, and he was another pirate with a letter of marque to prey upon the Spanish, which is how the term Negro came about. They hijacked some Spanish slave ships, and at first they were selling the Negroes that they stole, as the Spanish used the term to stand for black, and they would sell the stolen blacks or slash Negroes back to the Spanish at cut rates. Then they brought some to Virginia, what is it, 1619, and sold some there. That's where the term Negro got to being so popular. And the
Right.
institution of the
Because even when
plantation.
we look at South America, they would call them Negroes or
Yeah,
Negras de
well,
Terra, Negroes of the land.
Spain's Spain settled South America. They ruled the world for a while, but they didn't have what it took to keep it. So you had that. And by the way, the plantation model was developed in Ireland when the same Sir Walter Raleigh and same Sir Francis Drake were allowed to set up plantations in Ireland. And it's the interesting thing about the Irish, too, they were considered non white until 1872 when there was a joint act of Congress in the House and Senate that declared them to be white uh, as an act of appreciation for their brave service for both the Union and the Confederacy. It's all kinds of interesting stuff. Very seldom does it match the popular impression about things. Slavery was
Yeah.
evil, but bottom line is what you gonna do? Whine about it or do something about it? And doing something about it is not whining about somebody owes you something. Of course they do. But the rule throughout human history that's always been applicable is might makes right. So are you a real badass that nobody will mess with? Or are you just a whiner and beggar? Are you making your community shitholes where everybody's worrying about death and theft? Or are you improving their lot? And see, that's another thing the Democrats do. They'd rather attack boogeyman Trump in D.C. and let theft and death roam the streets of their cities instead of doing something for the people. And most of them aren't really of you anyway. They're afraid of you, so they won't walk in your neighborhood, so they won't walk anywhere after dark. They're scared of you. And they don't care. They can escape other places, and theft and death can lurk. They don't give a damn. And that,
Right.
by the way, is one of the sterling qualities of all civilized people, whether they're red, white, black, brown, yellow, anywhere in the world, is public peace, dignity, and order. And when somebody tells you that you are innately a criminal and coming down against disorder and lawlessness is somehow anti you, that is the gravest of slurs upon you personally and as an ethnic group because it's saying you are criminals. And man, it's just a black thing, man. No, it's not. Mm-mm.
Exactly. It's meant to keep us in a box. But I want you to think of this really quick because if you think about slavery, we've all known in history that many different groups of people have been in a servitude or in a type of slavery, as well as the out of Africa theory, just like you just said. The out of Africa theory is everyone is coming out of Africa. But why is it that when it comes to all the populations that have been in slavery, the Black American has to be defined by that slavery, or all the
He's
human
not
populations
defined.
that are Africa, we have to be defined as African instead of being American. That's what their pushes to
Well,
us.
you've defined some. I live in a place as a suburb of Memphis called Germantown. Where do you think that came from?
Germans, the Germans
Yeah,
established it.
okay. Italiano. Where do we go? We like Italian food. We like French food. We like Spanish food, Mexican food. We like Chinese. We like sushi. We like Wagyu beef, you know. So what else is new? So we are supposed to be unique from that. And by the way, slave comes from Slav. It was felt for a long time that the ideal people to put in that condition of servitude were Slavs. That's where the term slave came from. So you're calling Negroes a Slavic term. Think
Right,
about it.
right,
Every
exactly.
single
Yeah. And
group
why
on this
aren't they telling
planet
the
has been
Slav, or
enslaved,
why
but they
can't they tell
got
the Slavic
beyond it.
people that they're out of Africa?
Yeah, but they
Right.
got beyond it. And by the way, it's not a theory, it's a fact. You can prove it by the bones in the ground. You can prove it by A lot of things, even the reasons for the color differential between the higher latitudes and close to the equator, you can prove it genetically. It's not a theory, it's a fact. Some people would disagree, but you know, it is what it is. And it also has to do with their lack of success getting where they, I hope, would like to be. But remember, there is no whole group of people anywhere in the world that has a position of power that they do not work very hard at acquiring, keeping, and enforcing. I've known billionaires personally, had them sit down at tables in my house and been at their houses. And they don't have 40-hour work weeks. They have 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks. They never rest. And it's interesting looking at the people who got a lot of leisure time, spend so much of their moments watching football, baseball, basketball, housewives, Oprah, nonsense like that. They waste their time. See, if you want to be powerful, you have to work at it. Now, there are those who are born into well to do families, the so called legacy wealth I hear so much of. But even amongst the rich and powerful, those are looked down upon as just trust fund idiots who don't do anything with the money. And everybody who has money sort of turns their nose up at them as less than worthy of attention. So it's about power, and power is about hard work. And when it comes to power, it's not just about money. He certainly wasn't what I would call rich, but who would downplay the authority of an Albert Einstein? He wasn't by any means what you would call wealthy, but look at General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, who has the unique distinction of commanding more troops than any other general in human history. At the end of World War II, there were 12 million people in uniform under his direct command. So, was he to be reckoned with because of money or because of his power? Einstein, was he to be reckoned with because of his money or because of his intellect? You see, when everybody else in the world evaluates power, they say the landed aristocracy, the industrialist, the person who runs politics, the intellectual elite, the intelligentsia, they call it, and the military. And all of these are at the top who run things. Meanwhile, the 95% that's at the bottom, they get told what to do and they get off into give them bread and circuses and they won't care what happens as long as it doesn't too negatively impact them directly. And bread and circuses feed them and entertain them. Donne pane scarciae. That's it, how you say it in Latin.
Well, I did want to go back a little to, I know you were saying that out of Africa is a fact, but I want to ask you this question. When we look at our grandparents that didn't have the out of Africa theory and they were just living, they a lot of them, some of them thought of themselves as Indians, had tribal affiliation, some of them just Negro, like you said before, colored, but they had a different will than our generation has as far as to make it do something for themselves and their family. How has out of Africa helped when we're seeing more of the negative, us being seen as we're definitely of African descent, and the out of Africa theory has just brought us downhill as a people, rather us
It
having that pride in America.
it hasn't brought us down per se. It's fools or the foolish who want it as an excuse for lack of performance who have made it a bad term. Everybody is ultimately out of Africa ancestral wise, ancestry wise, but it just depends on whether you're talking about recently out of Africa or out of Africa very, very long time ago. Now, my great grandfather was born in Africa. He was brought over here after the slave trade was officially over in the early part of the 19th century, and they had to let him loose. And my grandfather, who was his firstborn son, was born in 1850. I knew him. He lived to be more than 100, and you know, he used to talk to me a lot, and he wrote a journal, and I got it when I was in my 30s from his lawyer, and I read it. My idiot first wife burned it up, but that's another thing. I remember it. So he knew he was out of Africa. My grandfather knew he was out of Africa. That's on my maternal side, one of the grandfathers I had. The other one was a Choctaw. And my Choctaw grandmother was an interesting person. I can remember her looking at some of the other part of the family, and they'd be mad, and she'd laugh, and she'd say, "You colored people, you get mad and don't know what to do. We take scalps and nail them to the lodgepole, and we smile."
So when it comes to that, and a lot of us do have those mixtures, and maybe some don't or anything, is there a problem with people that are pushing people to not have pride in their American side of the story? Because I feel like that is what is pushing this big push towards FBA, because there's been so long for us to hate the American side that we've all been a part of. That's the only side a lot of us even know.
Well, it's done. It's been done a lot in history. The Nazis most recently did it. They had their own mythologies about where people came from, the Aryan supermen and all of that, which was false as a narrative. So it's not surprising. It's a thing, it's a fallback to disguise your own failure. White supremacy in the United States of America right now, if you've got it going on, you can get pretty close to the top or to the top if you're black. It's just what kind of preparation did you put into your life early on? And mostly that's determined by what are you doing at your kitchen table at night? Are you studying your homework or are you not at your kitchen table? So I defy anyone to tell me that there's some racist white man sitting on the other side of their kitchen table every night, keeping their children from learning something that they're not there to help them learn or there to insist that they study.
Right. That is true as far as, and that is one thing I even say there just seems to be a lot more excuses in these times than in comparison to our grandparents that are going through a lot of these different issues, and they're really not making the same excuses. They're making sure that their family is okay, and I think we lost a little bit of that, especially with looking for different things like different handouts, looking for the government to help us instead of being like, we can come together and we can put our own agenda together. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight, as far as with when we are reconstructing our path, when we are delineating and saying we are the Americans that helped build this America. What do we focus on? What do we not focus on? I know a lot of things with you, as far as we've talked about the whole Africa and the Africa descent before, but where do you see them fitting into our story to help us? Where do you see us being able to come together and
Nowhere.
actually benefit? Nowhere?
They're irrelevant. The only reason they're important is to set the stage for understanding current circumstances, to give you some idea of what your origins are, and perhaps to inspire you with anger at what happened to them. It doesn't have a damn thing to do with what's going to go on day after tomorrow. That's you where you are right now and what's inside your head and what you are prepared to do. How brave are you? And I don't call it being brave going out and trying to get one of your neighbors to kill you, which is suicide by neighbor, just like suicide by cop, because you are a failure in life. And you start failing very early on. Your character is written in stone by the time you are 7, if you're a human. And if you've been effed up before you got to be 7, I submit that it probably wasn't a racist white man or woman. It was the person you look at every day that's supposed to be raising you, or the persons, too often just one these days. And how did we get caught in that? Well, that became popular over 50 years. I can remember the black or the Negro poetess, Nikki Giovanni, going all over the country, 67, 68, telling all of the young females, white, black, brown, red, yellow, they didn't need a man. They could do better without one. And if they wanted to be mothers, just go get knocked up with somebody who was tall, handsome, and smart, not even tell him he was the dad, because the only thing a man could do with children is mess them up. So she spread that all over the country, but she wasn't white. So we got a lot of stuff that we have to take blame for. And look at our Black Caucus. It's a bunch of house boys who want to work up in the big house, and a bunch of third floor, second floor bed wenches who want to be up in the big house so they can graduate to being house mammies up in the big house and deal with the management of the Negro. And by the way, a lot of what is said about we built America could be said about horses too. If the Negro is responsible for building an America, it was mostly serving as a two-legged domestic animal, just like you have the four-legged kind, horses. So you got to move on past that and start dealing with your humanity and not marvel about what somebody did to exploit you. Move on behind it. If you're going to think about it, get mad about it and do something about it. Play Spartacus.
I agree. But when we come into the history and we look at America, should we look at America as a foreign concept or a concept that is by the people here?
It's not
Even
a
if it,
foreign concept. There is a truth. Truth has no face but truth itself. You talk about Pythagoras, he owned slaves, he was a Greek, but his math is still taught because it's still valid. All right, so do we reject the math that we use every day, including an evolution of it in these devices that we're using right now to communicate? You'd be a fool. Who invented gunpowder? The Chinese. But everybody has found great utility and proficiency in the use of gunpowder over the centuries. So do you think everybody else in the world, including the Africans, are supposed to reject gunpowder because the Chinese invented it? Pasta was invented by the Chinese. They called it noodles. See, a whole lot of people have done stuff around the world. That's why we have had this trade. That's why the world expanded, because they were trying to set up trade to reach out, either exploit, to cooperate with, or use some of the other people that they ran into in the world. And then sometimes it happened you reached out and found you dealt with a real badass who might put you to the same kind of use.
yes, definitely. That seems like that was happening as well. But I do find very interesting, like you were saying, the trade that encompasses the world. You know, even a lot of our languages, English would be more so developed through that trade through different places. So when we're
Yeah,
talking
it's
about,
It's an ancient language. And see, when you get back into the ancient languages, they have origins where 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 modern languages sprang from those origins. Like, for example, English is a combination of
It's just
romance,
about
meaning romance languages, meaning the stuff that came from the Romans, also some of the Nordic languages. And like if you take Old Norse, Old English, or Old German, how do you say I'll fix it? The word, the term, how do you say I'll fix it? You say me fix it. That's how you say that in Old German, Old Norse, and Old English. And then you throw in a lot of Latin terms in there too, which, being from the Mediterranean, had a lot of input from North Africa and Sub Saharan Africa. So you have a ubiquitous conglomeration of modern languages. And then should you learn English? Well, if you're in an airplane over the People's Republic of China, the air traffic controllers speak English. If you're off the Cape of South Africa and you're dealing with their South African version of a Coast Guard, they speak English. If you're flying over Moscow and you're getting ready to get in the landing pattern, they speak English. Learn English
exactly.
so you can fit in with the rest of the world. Walk around, looking fly, looking like you look like a thug. I'm expressing myself. No, you look like a loud fool. And in addition to you trying to share your music from 4 blocks away that a whole lot of people don't want to hear, you go to Pretoria, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, you go to Zurich, Switzerland, you go to uh, Copenhagen, Berlin, London, Paris, Rome, Firenze, also known as Florence. You go to Beijing, you go to Hanoi, you go to Australia, you go to Hawaii, you go to the United States. When powerful men, whatever their hue, whatever their ethnicity, when they get together, they have on what? The business suit. And everybody is in that uniform with a white shirt or a collared shirt and a tie and shine shoes for the most part. So, what makes you think there's something ethnic about looking like every other powerful man on the planet Earth when he is getting ready to take care of business?
I understand that, but I would say that it when we come to the point that we're here, and I do want to open up the panel. I know other people are going to want to come up and have questions, but back to the FBA, when we're talking about so much, even the languages, the business, so much is dependent on us, even globally around the world. Why is it this kind of beating
What
us down
depends
to
on
losing
us?
it?
What
I
there
mean,
are
we're
things.
we're one of the top consumers. I don't know if we should brag about it, but we're
That's
definitely
something to
someone
be
that's
ashamed of.
influencing. Exactly. I
Are
don't
we
think it's something to be
producers?
ashamed of.
What do
I
we
think
produce?
I think that is a point of where we would be more producers if we got to a point where we were at like a delineation type of we can start producing these things. We don't always have to be the consumers, but there has
Why
to be
don't
a
we
focus
do
on
it?
us outside of everybody else. Well, I think we're
Why?
focused on way
Why?
far too many people. We're focused on
Why?
everybody but ourselves.
But I mean, it's nice, but why? There's no need for it. You sit down at that table until you are in the 12th grade and you bust your behind studying, you make it in the world. Don't care where you are. If you want your child to make it, you will sit them down at that table and insist and make them do the homework. If you want that child of yours to get somewhere, you will discipline them and not let them grow up like a wild weed. They'll get somewhere. If you want them to arrive somewhere with the ability to foresee what's going to happen, you will teach them morality, ethics, principle, standards of bravery and courage, with an ambition to make where they live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity and sense of purpose. You will make them brave and courageous. You will build character. You will insist that your pulpit pimp preacher stop talking about belief and start talking about sin in the development of character. You will insist that the people you elect to represent you are some not jackass little sissified thieves who are sitting at a desk stealing money from you, but are actual leaders who will be out front showing you where to go for your own benefits. See, these are the kind of things you have already the access to, but you don't insist because you're too worried about image, appearances rather than substance. You want to go flash and you look like the brokest, poorest somebody in hell, when the people that really have the power had a business suit, collared shirt, and a tie on, shine shoes, neatly groomed, and they're making lots of money and control a lot of power. You're dressed like something you think is cool with hip hop, but what have you been looking to out of his own mouth? Diddy talking about he and his girlfriend had that sissy pimp gigolo up there, and they'd have him jack off in a cup and they'd drink it. Now that's your heroes for now. So what do you think's going to happen when that kind of something is your heroic image? And we seem to be part of that trick bag where we want to emasculate the country.
If we could
I'll
go
win.
further of emasculating the country, do you mean just by the way we are treating the men in general, in politics, how they treat Trump, or just get into
Yeah,
the
Trump sees the
masculine of it?
masculinity profile on two legs. The feminists hate that. They control the Democratic Party, so they propagandize their Negroes into hating that too. They call it toxic, but it's part of the human race. It brought us from cave to condominium. And when I listened to some of the youth, the terminology they used was invented, developed, and put in their heads by people that don't like the fact that they're masculine. So there is something to be said for being masculine. It's to be recognized in this. In 50 years, they've had officially a thing called Take Your Daughter to Work Week. They have never had one, even unofficially, Take Your Son to Work Week. How does that pan out in the real world? Well, for the last 25 years, on average, only 28% of each year's high school graduates are male. On average, only 32% of college undergrads at public colleges and universities are male. Only 36% of the grad students are male. And most disgustingly, only 44% of the American workforce is male. And as far as that goes, it gets worse. More 35-year-old males are staying at home with a relative than females. And most embarrassingly, there are more 25-year-old male virgins, black, white, brown, red, yellow, than there are 25-year-old virgin girls. That's ridiculous. Boys can't even get laid. Some of them can, but they're screwing everything. So maybe that's why they have this incel woman hating group of perverts out there too. It's
And that
crazy.
definitely affects the incels, which has been a major thing. But that is really amongst foreigners as well. I mean, who do you see the top incels that are doing actual killings and
Right
shootings and all
here
this
in the
other stuff?
United
You don't see a
States,
lot of us. We're all foreign,
from what I looked at
but they're foreigners.
35
They're
years
not
ago, 25 years ago, when I
American.
was on the criminal bench, right here in our communities, you see it. There's a lot of hatred for women out there amongst some of the males. Their mamas didn't do them right. They secretly hate their mamas. They hate the women that they run into. They don't have any respect for them. And what do you say? Hey, man, it's about pimping, man. Even in the white community, they have phrases like pimping your ride. Uh, when I was practicing criminal defense law, the lowest persons in the penitentiary were the pedophiles. The next lowest were the pimps, and the only people that sucked more dick up in the penitentiaries than the pimps were the pedophiles. And that's what they're looking at to be.
And I definitely,
That thing with Diddy, that was classic pimpology. That's what the game looks like.
yeah. And we cannot deny that in our community, of course. But in the last 10 years, especially when you're bringing up incel, we can't negate that their level of violence is totally different from just pimping. They are going
Is
on
it?
massive killing
Is it?
sprees.
No, it's
I
not.
think so. If they're going
I
on killing
represented a
sprees
whole
because
lot of
they have
pimps in
not
Memphis,
had sex
Tennessee.
with a woman,
Look, I represented a whole lot of pimps in Memphis, Tennessee back 40, 45 years ago. Kept the rent paid. I mean, they'd shoot their hoes, they'd beat them, they'd cut them, they'd burn them, they'd slap them around, and there were even female pimps who'd do the same thing. Main thing with a pimp can't turn a woman into a hoe, but a preacher can, and the pimp comes along, sees the work the preacher's done, where the preacher exploits lack of self-esteem, tells them they'll be low good, low down sinners if they don't deal with following his words, and give him all of the money they can't afford to spare. And he'll pass to have the collection plate passed 8, 9 times per service on Sunday, and a whole bunch of times in the middle of the week for choir practice, Bible study, and when they have bake sales, they set up for social hour. It's the whole game they run. Pulpit pimps, pimps on the street. It's a way of controlling your woman. It's what you saw Diddy do. That's the pimp game. It's widespread. It's brutal. It's disrespectful. And it's not something that real men would do. But a lot of women try to do it too. They run that game of trying to rely on somebody's own lack of self esteem, and they tell each other, you ain't worth a damn. You're nothing. You only person that'll put up with your no good self is me. You ain't shit, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a game.
well, that's like, yeah, mentality, mind control. That's all basics of if you break them down, then they have to depend on you, so they live by
They're
you. But
already
this
broken
foreign,
down.
exactly.
You
But
can't
when we talk
turn a
about
health.
these
You can't turn a
foreigners
healthy
and
woman into
incels,
a hoe. You can't turn a
oh yeah,
healthy woman into a hoe.
at all.
She won't
No,
be
because
one.
she's relying on that because whatever that broke her in the past, whatever trauma she's dealing with as far as that. But when we're looking at these foreigners that are bombing places because their excuse is a girl has never looked at them, or they only want certain type of men and they feel like they need to take it out on chads, I think they call it, and Sarah's or
That
something like that.
isn't just
Chads is
foreign born
crazy.
men. That's right here in the hood. I made a
I don't
thriving
see
business.
I don't see
Well,
the
I
hood
did.
killing people.
I wasn't broke practicing law, and that was a whole bunch of my clientele. When I was on the criminal bench, that was a whole bunch of the defendants that came through my courtroom. It's not just the foreigners. Don't fool yourself. You'll be cutting yourself. Uh, a deep trench to be hard getting out of because it's a problem in our communities.
Well,
See,
it's too many of them
eh,
to see. We need to limit them a little bit to go to the bottom of the
well,
barrel
yeah, but it's
community.
so
But when you
ubiquitous. See, I used to go back in the 70s. I was the first black to be the public defender for the city of Memphis, also the first black to be a prosecutor for the city of Memphis. Now, I ran the PD's office, and a lot of my white employees were afraid to go out and talk to black clientele and black witnesses. I mean, it was a violent area they were going into, but I'd go and I'm in somebody's kitchen in the projects. It's filled with smoke, you know. You'd have to send your suit to the cleaners immediately because there's no way to get the smell out of it. And you have girls in this kitchen from 13 to 19. The 18-year old and the 19-year old are my clients because they're classified as adults. But everybody in there has got children, including the 13-year-olds. They smell like the devil, the kids, because they haven't been bathed. They have vomit and excrement all over them. Nobody's cleaned them. And the mom was going, little Ian, bring me my cigarettes, you little pickaninny, blah, blah. Why you talk to your boy like that? Because he ain't worth a damn. He looks like a no good daddy. And see, this kid's 8 years old. Why is he? It's not at school. When I was out late, I'm too tired to get up. Well, don't stay out late. Well, I got a life. Well, then why'd you have all 9 of these children? Okay, so this is 19, let's say 77, all right? This kid's 8. He should be in school. Let's go to 1987. He is now 17, 18 years old. Let's go to 2007. No, 1987, he's 18 years old. Let's go to 1997. He's now 28 years old. Let's go to 2007. He's 38 years old. 2017, he's 48 years old. And now, instead of 58, he's 56 because he'll be, in 2 years, he will be 58 years old. He's got great great grandchildren and he hasn't participated as a father in their lives. And what he's done is he's had the same attitude that his 14-year-old mama put in his head when he was 8 years old. Well, he wouldn't have been 8, but maybe his 20-year-old mama put in his head when she was 8 or 19, like my client's doing, too lazy to put her 8-year-old in school. So, this whole thing spreads poisonally. It's a real mess. And white
And I
folk didn't have
agree.
anything to
I
do with
think
that.
one of the major poisons, and I agree with that. I think one of the major poisons of the whole emasculation is this idea of toxic masculinity being spread to like women, especially in our community. It has been spread to be fearful of the men in our community. And all I'm saying is that even though there hasn't been a perfect relationship, what a lot of the things that they say is over exaggerated in our community, and it's way more in foreigner community. Yes, we do have domestic violence, but they have domestic violence to the extreme. Yes, we do have people that are abusive or anything like that, but you just do not hear our men getting so mad where they're killing and bombing up people that they killed 10 people because they're mad at one. You don't hear that from us, but now
You
we've had the
don't?
most gun violence. You
You
don't hear it as much.
don't?
You don't
You
hear it as much.
don't?
I don't
Read the
know of
papers.
them
Read the
going
papers.
to the Target just to kill anybody just because they're
Read
upset.
the papers. Memphis
Which
is the
one?
murder capital of the United States of America. By any metric, it is the 10th most dangerous city in the whole world. There are only 9 more dangerous cities wherever you may find one in a hellhole. We are far and away the most violent city in the United States in America. 75% of the population is black or Negro, and they do most of the killing of each other. 75% of the cops are black. 75% of the deputy sheriffs are black. The sheriff is black. The chief of police is a black female. 60% of the criminal court judges are black and female. You have 75% of the jury pool is black. There are only two members of the 9-member Board of Education that are not black. You have almost an exclusively black county commission, an almost exclusively black clown council, excuse me, city council. The mayor of the city is black. The county mayor is black. And then they're running around here talking about white supremacy. Where the hell is the white supremacy when black folk run the place and they kill each other with great authority? This isn't white people going out mass killing each other. This is just before the National Guard came in here, 6, 7 people got shot in a nightclub, all black on black. Somebody got shot on the freeway, black on black situation. It's us killing each other in huge numbers. We're not playing Robin Hood, robbing from the rich and giving to the poor who look like you. We are pimping, raping, robbing, murdering, burning, burglarizing our own people. And I mean, I don't care what your economic situation is, that's inexcusable. That's not.
Agreed. So do you think the white supremacy is just like a facade then? That it's
There
more
is a
so
thing.
happening?
Look. See, it's a propaganda triumph. Every time you hear a woke Negroes talking about white supremacy, let's examine it from a psychological aspect. For something to have the characteristic of supremacy, there is an implication that it is supreme or superior. What is this thing supposed to be supreme or superior to? Black people. So every time a woke Negro says white supremacy, subconsciously he's saying, I'm inferior. Every time he says the N word, his subconscious knows what it means. He knows about the history to it. He's saying that to himself. You ain't nothing but one. And every time you use it, man, you got to be a real N to be a N, man. You know, you're telling your stuff, your own self, you ain't worth a damn. So that was something that was carefully, calculatedly put in your head to start thinking like that. And it is counted a propaganda victory when the target of your propaganda starts using your terms and phrases and starts thinking of him or herself as you intended that they do.
So how do we fix that? If we see the problem of, let's start with the emasculation, how do we then turn around to fix that in our community, looking at us?
Stop listening to what is it, P Valley? Stop listening to Black Like Me. Stop listening to Blackish. Stop listening to Oprah Winfrey, who, by the way, was directed in everything she did by a white man. His name was Roger King. All right, stop listening to what is it, Empire and Poison, stuff like that, where the black hero and shero types are all scoundrels and crooks. You see, where you get into it, and sure enough, by episode 4, they're trying to have a gay affair with each other. Stop listening to idiots who are nothing but sellouts in the Black Caucus who come up with stuff like the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill, which has nothing to do with black folk. It has nothing to do with lynching. The anti-lynch bill that they're holding up, look what we did for you to protect you. Doesn't protect you because one, it doesn't require a mob. Two, it doesn't require a killing. Three, what it does is it just requires that somebody do something to someone because of their um, sexual orientation, and it introduces gender confusion or gender view is part of the first time is the American criminal part of the American criminal codes on the federal level. See, now the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill defines a murder, a kidnapping, or physical injury as a lynching. It doesn't require a mob. All it takes is one person. And what they're talking about and what it's designed to deal with is somebody breaks up with his girlfriend, he and his homies go out to a nightclub. Say, man, you need to come on, man, get it out off your mind, man, get out and have a good time. So he runs into what he thinks is a PYT. She's got on short dress, knit, long braids down to her butt and hoop earrings, big boobs, and they're dancing and exchanging spit in the shadows and drinking wine, and then he feels something and looks down, and Miss Thing got a heart on. He said, "Wait a minute, you a dude, man? Damn!" Bust him in the jaw. That's now lynching under the federal Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. See, you got an end run put on you. You're so happy to get something that's supposed to protect you, you don't even think about it, and the people you elected are selling you out because they're rainbow, not Negro.
But if I could be honest on that, I mean, like you were saying before, that our boys are less educated when it comes to formal education in college, and our girls are more educated, but it's our girls that are being educated in college that are pushing these agendas. So one thing about FBA I'll say that I've always agreed with them is the going back to our lineage and looking to our families. Do you think that's been a major problem of the education system, of just being too liberal and not having those essence of what our family was teaching us culturally, especially when it
Okay,
comes to the separation and emasculation of the men?
it's good to have pride in what you are. There's no getting around it. However, what do you study? How often have we heard about Black Wall Street getting wiped out? Tulsa, Oklahoma,
I think the last
1923.
victim just died recently, Kitty.
Why the hell do we pay attention to that? There were 123 cities where there were incidents or townships in this period from 1918 to 1923. One of them was in Washington, D.C. It lasted for a whole week. It's interesting. More white people died than black folk did because when they went off and started doing the rioting to deal with the colored, they didn't realize, meaning the other side didn't realize that there were some black veterans there who were gathering because they had survived the trenches in France in World War I. And when the thing started, some black Pullman car porters smuggled in some guns from Baltimore, and these veterans who had been in the trenches in France got on the roofs of these tenements and made excellent snipers and killed a whole lot of white folk. But we don't celebrate that. They literally had to send the cavalry in to break that up. But we don't talk about that. We just look at one place, Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is kind of actually an embarrassment because nobody owned any property rights. They were all leasing the stuff from the Native Americans. So things happened, but that got blown out of proportion. What about the rest of the places? We didn't lose everywhere, so why don't we pay attention to our victories instead of just our losses? 123 locations. And we pay attention to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we didn't own any property rights. We had leaseholds. We foolishly disregarded the need to defend self. People had been saying you need to set up some kind of defense plan. And we ignore where we kick some ass, lots of ass, in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, over a 5-day period. See what's wrong
But
with this
isn't that
picture?
something? Yes, but isn't that something that they kind of impress on us with the African slave story, that we're
Excuse
perpetual
me,
victims,
who
that we
is
don't have?
they? Do you think
Like the
white people are going
educational,
around teaching
no,
black people
not
about the
not
slave
white
trade?
people, but I mean the educational system, our
Okay,
system that
who
they have here.
prompted this in the educational system? Do you think it's white people? No.
No, I definitely know that it would be
Okay, so
people that look
why
like us.
did we produce a bunch of ignorant scholars who, instead of acquiring knowledge, acquired ignorance and perpetrated it and chose to teach this? Or maybe they had a better purpose in mind. They were trying to inspire people to get mad. But some other folk ran with it the wrong way, and instead of getting them mad, they just decided to say, "Oh, poor you, you got mistreated so badly. We send in $19 a month to the Save a Negro Fund. We do that to save the whales and the tigers and the bear and the wolf. We might as well send in $19 a month to save a Negro.
Yes,
Meanwhile,
exactly. And
we'll get to
respectfully, I'm
spend all this
saying
money on
whether they had
salaries."
good and exactly. And
When you
respectfully,
say
I'm saying
they,
whether they
who
had
are we
good
talking
intentions
about?
or not, now
We're
that
talking
we see
Al
that it is a
Sharpton.
profession.
We're talking Al
Exactly.
Sharpton. We're
Hmm.
talking Maxine Wastewater. We're
Yes.
talking Jasmine
Jasmine
Coonhead
Crockett.
Crockett. We're
Hmm.
talking, okay, Roland Martin. We're talking all of the black talking heads who want to push that victim rhetoric. And who do we make our heroes? By the way, has anybody heard of H. Rap Brown? You should. One of the most dynamic speakers of the 20th century. He could fire up a group of black folk, white folk, and have them standing on their chairs with 10,000 of them, everybody in an auditorium or an arena. He got set up by somebody black, the Maulana Ron Karinga, aka Ron Everett, broke down an M1 carbine and put it in his luggage and were telling him they were doing him the favor of transporting it to LA International Airport. And they betrayed him because he was charged with inciting a riot. So here he is charged with a criminal offense, taking a weapon on board an airplane. And back in those days, they didn't run through metal detectors, no security checkpoints. You walk up to the gate with a pistol in your luggage. Nobody cared. They did a couple of years later after all of these hijacked planes went to Cuba.
Right. I was thinking it sounded like the Fred Hampton story, but yeah,
No,
definitely
it's not
looks.
Fred Hampton because these people weren't victims. See, and the victim story here was it was a profoundly inspirational black man who was a great speaker, had a dynamic presence, and it was a scoundrel, round Ron Karinga, who was cooperating with the SIS unit of Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI to get black leadership out of the way, effective black leadership. But we celebrate Kwanzaa, which he started, so we crave a black holiday that a treasonous individual set up for us. See where this goes? How much of this is white supremacy's fault and how much of it is our own fault? You go into church and you're supposed to be getting a message so that you can save yourself get to heaven, I suppose, instead of going to hell. And we got a pimp up in the pulpit trying to get money so he can increase his financial status. And he ain't interested in saving you. And he playing down there with all of them boys bouncing around spastically in front of the pulpit in spite of Leviticus 20:13.
So how do we decipher that, like in the future when you're looking at all these proponents that have come against us? Do you look into, okay, we look at how they're saying, what they're talking about, what their agendas are, like Jasmine Crockett? What if they say all the right things but they look like us? How do we decipher who's for us and who's against us?
If you're out and you're at a gas station getting ready to pump your gas and it's 1:17 a.m. in the morning and you just came from a function, are you worried about somebody white coming up approaching you at the gas pump? Or is it likely to be somebody that's one of your own people?
Depends on the part of town, but on people.
Yeah. So the direction ain't in white supremacy, it's at ourselves. In other words, all humans have a pretty universal standard of conduct, code, and character. So, what's wrong with us complying with it? And what is it we need to know? Well, how many can talk about their favorite football team and all of the statistics? The Steelers or somebody, or the Packers or the Rams. How many can talk about their favorite baseball team or their favorite basketball team and recite all the stats? How many can ask your mother about Erica and everybody that everybody knew about in the soap opera era, which went on for years and decades? Knew all that. But now I ask them about politics and what's going on. I can't be involved in politics. Then you're a fool. Because every single day you breathe air on this planet, politics impacts you directly. Whether it's operating your car and driving and having to deal with the rules of the road or getting a traffic ticket, or what you pay on income tax, or what you make at the job. That's politics. So don't talk about you can't be bothered.
So when we're talking about getting more involved in politics, do we need a new party to represent us?
Why don't you just take over the ones you have? Or remember this, if one party knows they've got their slaves supporting them no matter what they don't do for them, and the other party says no matter what we try to do for them isn't going to change anything, neither side has any incentive to do anything for you. And then there's a third party developing right now. It's called MEGA. Black folk can get in on the ground floor of that and have something that'll push them, or they can control. But they don't have sense enough. They're loyal domestics and good dogs. Now, you want to hear what it's really about? Where there is a problem that's in this mix. Years and years ago, I was at UCLA and I was fascinated by anthropology. So I was in the archives of one of the libraries there, and I was reading a book from the 1920s, early 1920s, and it was trying to convince people that evolution was correct and Darwin was right. So they were saying one has only to look at the African great apes to see how true Darwin's theory is. Look at how these great apes can give the appearance of almost being humans. Says they behave like people, they have gestures like people, they even grin and they laugh and they carry on like people. And some of the great African apes can even speak human language and breed with real humans. So we only have to look at the three major African apes: chimpanzees, gorillas, and Negroes, and we can see the truth of Darwin's theory. So at one point, they were considering us animals, very intelligent animals, but not really fully human. So I was being facetious, but I was being deadly serious when I said what we claim to be the basis for building America could be more accurately put on the back of a horse, literally. So let's start talking about what we did as people. So, why do we neglect to make heroes of the real heroes who fought to free themselves in the Civil War? We don't talk about that. We neglect
And
it.
I don't think we talk about, I mean, on both sides, the heroes that are on the Union side or the Confederate side as far as with it. But the main thing is that we take it away from where this is happening. This is
There
happening
weren't
amongst
any
American people.
there weren't any black heroes to the black race that were fighting for the Confederates. They fought for the Union to be free. Another thing, President Ulysses Simpson Grant, U.S. Grant, when he was commanding general of the Union Army, had a survey done. In his memoirs, he talks about it. It was at the end of the Civil War. He said initially he was astonished to discover that the only completely literate units in the Union Army were colored volunteers. And then when he thought about it, he said he was not surprised. He said, "You did not see drunk Negro troops." He said, whenever you saw a Negro, he was either practicing his reading, writing, and arithmetic, reading a book, or writing a letter to somebody. So he was not surprised. So, what happened between us being the most literate ethnic group in the entire Union Army in 1865 to where we are now? What happened?
Mm, that's a question to look. I definitely think it's more the Reconstruction era and what was happening as far as what was being pushed on the people. But before we go there, because you said there were no colored or good colored people, I guess, that were fighting on the side of the Confederacy. So are you saying when it comes to the black Confederates, that you see them on the opposite side, that they were doing something wrong when
Well,
they were fighting for
they promised slaves their freedom toward the end of the Civil War if they would fight for the Confederacy because they were running out of manpower. Now, to give you some idea, you ever heard of the Gettysburg Address 7 years ago? You
Yes.
remember that one, right?
Mhm.
Okay. What is it about Gettysburg that puts stuff into context? We had 52,000 Americans who died in Vietnam, combat wounds, and died within a short time after being wounded. All right. We had maybe a bit more than that who took their own lives over the intervening 50 some years since. Gettysburg, the casualties for this battle at Gettysburg, there were 87,000 casualties. 87,000. That's more than in the entire Vietnam War, but that occurred over just 3 days, one of which was the 4th of July. So it was widespread bloodshed. Um, More people died in the American Civil War than have died in all of the rest of the wars the U.S. has been in combined. Now, image. lack of truth. What is this where we had these characters talking about the crime of what's being done off of the Venezuelan coast, sinking these drug running ships, right? And who gave Trump authority to do this? You've heard this, right? Okay, well, if you weren't ignorant, and you've read the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 says, it shall be the duty and responsibility of the Commander in Chief and the Armed Services of the United States to pursue, eradicate, and suppress piracy wherever found in the world. That's part of the Marine Corps hymn. From the halls of Montezuma, that's the Spanish, well, that's the Mexican American War, to the shores of Tripoli, referring to what happened at the early part of the 19th century when they were fighting Barbary pirates. Okay. You do not need a declaration of war to oppose, suppress, and eradicate piracy. Further, in Article 1, Section 8, it says it's also the duty and responsibility of the Commander in Chief and the armed forces of the United States to, quote, enforce the law of nations, unquote. Now, Article 6 of the Constitution says ratified treaties are part of the supreme law of the land, along with the Constitution itself. And part of that body of ratified treaties includes quite a number of those that we have engaged in with other parties and around the world that declare the high seas traffic in narcotics to be a crime, also to be acts of piracy. So we don't need a declaration of war. We don't need anybody to say go for it. Somebody has a constitutional mandate and an assigned duty to pursue, suppress, and eradicate piracy, and enforce the law of nations. And it's clear what that amounts to. In addition to that, we have what's known as the Monroe Doctrine, which has been effective for almost 200 years. So there are mandates in this that when the ignorant want to inflame you, start talking about what the boogeyman's doing. And what you might want to look at is, let me read the U.S. Constitution. It takes the average high school graduate about 15 minutes. It's not long at all. So read it. You'll see a lot of this stuff that the far left press, the Democratic Party, and the woke folk want to attack somebody about it, or things that are required or allowed under the Constitution.
I asked you a little bit about this before, but when you think back to when you were a student and you were pushing for the black to take over Negro, you were like, we're not Negro. That's a Spanish word. We need our own word. We need our own power when it comes to this. What would you say you would want to see as far as moving on from that point in present day? How would
It, it
someone
had
take?
it
Mhm.
had other bases. Can you see Negro power? No, black power. I'm Negro and I'm proud. No, I'm black and I'm proud. It's got a ring to it. That transition came from 1965 to 66. Then they started
It
talking
didn't
about
sound
Afro American
right.
power, uh, black power to black people, Panther power to the vanguard, or it spread black power to black people, white power to white people, etc. We went on. See, everybody was known by the label in English that went to it. The red man, the yellow races, the brown races, the white races, and then you got the Negroes over there that can't even use their own language to describe themselves. So that kind of went there. And it wasn't a thing, it was just being proud of self, overcoming this disdain that had been put in heads by even ourselves. We used to have a phrase: if you're white, you're all white, all right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back. if you went over to, there's a certain pub near Howard University, it may still be there, but they had that written on a banner in this pub, and it had been there since the 1930s, I was told. But anyway, it may still be there, it may not be. See, we spread a lot of that all around. Negroes and flies, I do despise. If I had to make a choice, I think I'd pick flies. That was a black saying.
So you would say your motivations weren't really as political as they are now. They still were pretty political back then.
Well, yeah, it was about power. See, we got mildly embarrassed by the civil rights movement. We did not consider it to be a fight when you're down on your knees praying to some dead Jewish person, while some rednecks beat you across the head until some more of them felt guilty about it. That's not a struggle. That's not a fight. That's getting your ass beat. So we didn't like it. And there were a lot of black veterans from Korea, World War II, and some older ones from World War One. They said we were in combat. It was kill or be killed. I'm not letting somebody sit there and beat on me, draw back your hand to go strike me, and you might not have a hand left. So there was a lot of black opposition to the civil rights thing. Rosa Parks, I met her, great woman. She was one of quite a few black females who got arrested for not moving to the back of the bus. But then Jackie Robinson, the baseball player, he's known for baseball, but he only became a baseball player because he got court-martialed because one day he was taking the bus home after escorting the wife of a fellow officer home, and he refused to remove himself to the back of the bus. But instead of being peaceful about it, when the bus driver stopped the bus, ran off and called the police on a payphone, the police, the Texas Rangers, and some MPs showed up. Jackie Robinson was still in his duty uniform, and he had a 45 automatic strapped on. And the testimony of this court martial was that he pulled his pistol out, chambered around, and said, "Some MF is going to die tonight besides me." But you see, few people know about that. Though if you read Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's study on it, it's laid out very well and in great details about it. He never played baseball, but he was an outstanding athlete, and he held the American record in the 100-yard dash and in the 220-yard dash. And when he resigned after beating the court martial, uh, he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." And somebody said, "Captain, why don't you go play with the Negro Leagues?" He said, "I've never played baseball." He said, "Yeah, you're the fastest man in America. And when you go to bat with these morale games, everybody backs up 15 yards when you're on at bat." So the rest was history. They hired Don Newcomb and Roy Campagnolo. Newcomb was 17 years old, and I spent 4 hours one evening talking to him about it. And Roy Campagnolo was a great catcher. Newcomb was about one of the best pitchers that ever pitched in the major leagues, won every award a pitcher can win. Uh, Campagnolo, he got his neck broken in a car wreck and got confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. But Jackie Robinson had a bad temper. And then white supremacy. Oh, yeah. But why did they pick Jackie Robinson? Because they knew he'd stand up for himself. They knew he was tough and smart. He had been a captain in the U.S. Army. They knew he was a hell of an athlete, and he had a bodyguard. You ever seen The Rifleman with Chuck Connors? Tall, blonde-haired white guy that was a rifleman. He twirled around this cut-off Winchester. Well, he's a real live badass. What happened is some pitcher hit Jackie Robinson with a baseball on purpose. Robinson was going out to bust him in the mouth, according to Don Newcomb. and Connors ran out the bullpen and busted the pitcher in his jaw, knocked him out. He got thrown out the game, but for the rest of the career for both of them, he was Jackie Robinson's bodyguard, so Robinson didn't have to worry about starting a race riot by knocking some white guy out. And then he's another example for something that black folk need to do when they get the opportunity. The Dodgers had not won a pennant in years. They had played 5 games. It was the sixth game. It was the opposition had won 3, the Dodgers had won 2. It was the bottom of the ninth, and the Dodgers were behind by 1 run, and it was 2 outs, only 3 outs per inning. And when that final out went, that would have been over for the Dodgers. Jackie Robinson came to bat. He got a base hit and got to first. Okay, the next batter came up. What happens is there were 2 balls on that batter. Jackie Robinson stole second. All right, there was a strike on the batter, so it was 2 balls, 1 strike. Jackie Robinson stole third base. So at this point, it was 3 balls and 2 strikes. They call it a full count because if one more strike goes, it's out and the game's over. The Dodgers lose and are kicked out of the pennant race. And if there's a ball, the guy takes the base, it's still 2 outs. So what does Jackie Robinson do? He steals home plate. He's the fastest man in America. So badass Jackie Robinson ties the game up. They have 6 more innings. The Dodgers win. And then since it's a 3-game tie, they wind up winning the pennant for the first time in years. And everybody wants them a Negro baseball player, a black baseball player. Now contrast that with what Barack Obama did when he was in office. Did he play Jackie Robinson and steal home plate with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth? No, he didn't. He just sat there and made an embarrassment of himself and didn't do anything. See, that's what we do now. We have Al Sharpton's chicken eating George Sharpton, and that's what he's supposed to do. We don't have black heroes. Uh, our Malcolm X's were dead with the complicity of people who were not anxious for him to upstage their preaching game. You have Martin Luther Kings who were not killed because of civil rights, but were killed because J. Edgar Hoover made the mistaken judgment call of saying he's not a threat with civil rights activity, but he might galvanize the anti-war movement and revitalize labor, so let's kill him. And the FBI recruited the 2-man team from Quantico, Virginia's Marine Sniper School right across the way from the FBI training facility. They supplied the weapon, an XM-21, and the special ammunition that they used. And the shot came from the fire station, not the flop house or the bushes. I know I was the last judge on the case. So, we've got all kinds of rumors out there that are untruth about what went on. We've even got one that uh, Jackie Robinson got smothered in the emergency room. No, he didn't make it to the emergency room. You get your carotid artery complex on the right side of your neck ripped out and completely destroyed. You bleed out within 15 to 30 seconds. You're gone. He didn't get off the balcony. Jesse Jackson's supposed to be the one that betrayed him. It wasn't Jesse Jackson. The preacher that betrayed him was interviewed by Dick Gregory a few months before he died. And Mr. Gregory asked him, he said, why did you duck back in the Lorraine Motel once you escorted Dr. King out on the balcony? And this preacher said, I didn't want to get shot. So Dick Gregory dropped him and said, "What made you think you were gonna get shot?" Well, just under the circumstances. That was the person that betrayed him because that person had a thing for young girls
Hmm.
and he was getting blackmailed,
So let's go back
allegedly.
to Obama because you were saying, Obama didn't step up on like Jackie Robinson, but isn't Obama an example of these foreigners that they use in blackface to represent us when
Well,
they're not really us?
he's really quite American in one sense. You ever heard of Samuel Hinckley, Hinkley? Look him up if you can find anything. Samuel Hinckley was a French Huguenot Protestant who fled France because of Catholic persecution. He became an indentured servant. He came over to America and he had some children. And his descendants were interesting because seven of his direct descendants were U.S. presidents, several were U.S. senators, one was a U.S. vice president, quite a few were American governors, including one who was the running mate of a certain presidential campaigner, and there are quite a few billionaires. One of the billionaires that is kin in this picture is Warren Buffett. One of the presidents was George Herbert Walker Bush. One of the other presidents was George Walker Bush. The vice president was the now late Dick Cheney, recently late Dick Cheney. And the other person is Barack Obama, who was blood kin cousin to the Bushes and Cheney and to Warren Buffett through his mother. And you see, this is what you're looking at right here. That's the genealogy. So it's no myth, that's reality. And Sarah Palin was John McCain's running mate and was her cousin's opposition. So cousin Obama, aka Barry Soetoro, was running against his blood kin cousin, who was the running mate of John McCain. And as far as it goes, John McCain had three grandchildren. And guess what? His daughter in law, the mother of the three grandchildren, is a shade darker than you are. And his white son married her, and they had several children, three children who were his only grandchildren. So John McCain had a closer connection with American blackness than Barack Obama did. He had three born in America black grandchildren who were browner than old Bambi boy was. Interesting, but see, we don't pay attention to that. So where did we get to be part of this mix?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question as far as because as you can see, these are Europeans mixed. Barack gives a little bit of African mixed with the European, but where is the American people in this story at all?
Ain't there? And damn sure ain't Kamala Harris. I had a conversation with her daddy in Jamaica. He said he was a mix of Irish and Hindu. He said, I don't have any black in me. And remember, little black Sambo was not African, he was Indian.
Hindu.
Yes. And Candace Owens exposed her lie. She was posing next to this black woman that was supposed to be her grandmother. And Candace let me look at the affidavits. Miss Candace Owens Farmer, her ladyship, allowed me to look at the affidavits from this collection of Jamaican women saying we knew that woman. She was high bright and she died 4 years before Kamala was born, so she's lying. That is not who that was. That was fake. So Kamala is Hindu with a little Irish in her, I guess, through her daddy.
Right.
She doesn't have any black African in her, no how, no way, except very remotely,
No
because
American,
everybody's
no
from out of
Jamaican,
Africa.
nothing. Right.
And by the way, a friend of mine who is a retired DEA agent, he is a brother. He's got a very blonde, blue haired wife, blue eyed wife. And guess where she's a citizen of? Jamaica. Her parents were born in Jamaica, as was her, and she's a member of the royal family remotely. So if you go to Jamaica and you go to uh, St. Elizabeth Parish, you will find a lot of high, bright, and white people. And you will hear somebody speaking patois and turn around and there's somebody Chinese standing there because it was part of the British Empire, the British Commonwealth. And there are people who live in Jamaica who came from Hong Kong, Singapore, Kenya, who came from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all kinds of places.
Were they brought in for labor at first? So these like
No,
people.
this woman who I am acquainted with, and she's got a beautiful daughter, drop dead gorgeous daughter. I think one of my sons had an interest in her at one time. Um, she was born in Jamaica. She was part of the royal household, a royal family, related to them remotely, but it was business. They didn't get brought in. They travel. And Jamaica's interesting. I had to write a letter of recommendation, pull some strings to get the prime minister's chauffeur a visa to be allowed to leave Jamaica to visit his son who was in university in New York. He was 67 years old and they didn't want to let him leave. See, my ex, she's a beautiful woman. She put on a lot of bling when she traveled. I tell her not to attract too much attention. We'd go through Jamaica and leave the country and James Bond types would come up. I said, "Your passport, where are you from?" "It's my wife, man. Who are you?" And see, when we'd go, we'd be guarded by the Maroons. That's the equivalent of their Secret Service. Those big brothers stuff if you interfering with the guests of the country. So, they'd get out the way. We'd get the VIP treatment. Very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting as far as what was going on with that.
You see, that's because
Someone else.
Negroes wanted this so badly that they took this great desire and they made it real in their minds.
Hmm. Someone said one of our other problems are the immigrants that are in office, immigrants that have
Yes.
citizen- citizenship. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as like all these immigrants that have powerful positions in our political sphere?
Yes. See, birthright citizen, let's stop citizenship. Let's start with that very quickly. That was designed to overturn some still active language at the time from the Dred Scott case that said essentially Negroes, colored, black folk could not be citizens of the United States. So even though that led to the Civil War, even though the Civil War had happened, it was still good law in America. So the 14th Amendment, which the great Frederick Douglass helped draft, had a great deal to do in its language with reversing Dred Scott. It never was intended to be applied to other things, like the 15th Amendment, for example, was set up to deal with setting the ground level, the landscape level for the former black slave. But the 15th Amendment got put to the greatest use in the country's history to empower corporations, fictional people. So the amendment was intended for one thing and it's used for another when it comes to the 15th, not even live people, but fictional people. And the 14th was intended to benefit slave descendants and former slaves. And it's obsolete because those conditions don't apply anymore. But now it's being used for anchor babies for illegal people who have broken the law. And the doctrine is an old one that should apply. It's called the Wong Sun Doctrine, Wongsun. And what it's about is it comes out of San Francisco. It deals with some Chinese tongs, those are gangs. And the principle that the Supreme Court set forth was the fruit of the poisonous tree is just as poisonous as the fruit and cannot be used. In other words, if you have an illegal search and seizure, then anything that comes out of that is impermissible as evidence. So if you broke the law getting into the United States, crime should not pay by allowing you to stay here by just simply enjoying yourself having sex and get knocked up. Now, all this stuff about sanctuary city and all this nonsense you hear in the back and forth is wrong for the most part because there is a long-standing statute. It is Title 8, Section 1324, and it makes all of that setting up a sanctuary city a felony. So, and it does not excuse official status either. So somebody just needs to banish their ignorance of the law and enforce it. There you go.
So, do you think they will, or do you think they? Why didn't they ban it in the first place? Do they have an
Well,
agenda with the?
because the Biden administration was in, and prior to that, the Trump administration, the first edition 1.0, wasn't really Republican, but he had to placate the Republican Party. And he wasn't able to do what I think he wanted to do. Now he can, since he comes in kicking ass, mega, and all of that. So I have a sneaking suspicion that since he's got 3 years and 1 month left in his administration, and our current vice president is likely to do 8 years in office, you will see in that 11-year period, you're going to see quite a few people indicted and wind up going to jail. I think Tish James will be, Fannie Willis is going to be, I think some others are going to be.
What about the Somalis? Was it Amon?
Well,
Uh,
Somalia is the main center of world piracy right now. It was Kenya. It's like what happened with Nigeria. And I do have some connection personally with Nigeria ancestrally. And there's a lot of crime, particularly con artist type stuff, con games that came out of Nigeria. Now, what happened with the fraud, $1 billion or so that we are seeing develop there? You and I were talking about it earlier. That needs to be looked into. And that's another thing. You're going to get here. Why do you give your people a bad name? Can't resist the temptation. And you see, that's a different culture. Dash is ordinary business. You know what Dash is? It's bribes under the table. You're expected to bribe the people whose help you need, pull off whatever you're trying to pull off. That's normal politics. But it is what it is. and people need to be held strictly accountable to such things. I know people who have been here for decades trying to become citizens, doing it the right way, and every single thing that came up slightly questionable, they got held up. So why was the rush to let these people in so quickly? Well, I think I know what it is. Article 1 of the Constitution says every 10 years there shall be a census conducted, the primary purpose of which is to apportion representation in the House of Representatives in Congress. So I participated in 6 census takings as an adult. And the last one in 2020 was the first and only one where I was not asked my status as a citizen nor the status of my parents. And that was so that these people could be counted, so California would not lose congressional representation, nor would Illinois, New Jersey, and New York. And the interesting thing about it is these people just being counted with no differentiation as to whether they're citizens or not. California would have picked up extra congressmen or maintained the ones they had, but the people that were being counted in part could not vote. So they would have no impact on these extra representatives or these maintained representatives. That's the whole thing behind making DC a state. DC is 300,000 people max or thereabouts. So why should they get 2 senators and 2 voting congressmen? It's ridiculous. If they want them to vote, they can cede the District of Columbia outside of the Capitol Mall back to Maryland, and they can vote in Maryland and have representatives in the House who can vote and participate in the selection of 2 U.S. senators. That's all they need to do. They do not need to give this far left an additional advantage for having a medium-sized town able to have 2 senatorial and 2 House votes. It's a game. And see if Kamala Imhoff, Harris Imhoff, Mrs. Imhoff, had gotten elected or selected by the Electoral College. Under the Constitution and American laws, the President of the United States can declare a person or a group of persons to be political refugees and grant them political asylum, and they can make the date of the effective asylum retroactive. So if Kamala had gotten in, she could have made that date January 2020. So there is an interesting thing that kicks in under American law. If you're in an asylum status, you don't have to take classes, you don't have to take exams. You automatically become a citizen in 5 years, which means you can vote. So right now, they would have been eligible to vote. So they could have voted in the midterm elections next year. But some people would willingly risk Americans getting blown up, killed, mutilated, so they could get a political advantage.
Right. In voting or just bringing those people over. So
You're
then
leaving the
when we're
border
looking
wide open.
right, when we're looking at who's for us, who's really looking for out for just the American people, like where should we be looking for people that really want to engage in our interests?
That's it. We don't ask, remember? Why should I vote for you? Somebody comes back and tells you they're a black woman, so that's why you should vote for them. Wait a minute. What about your policy on the border? What about you letting this rainbow theology take over our schools and systems when you can't put a cross up, a Jewish star up, an Islamic crescent, etc. up, but you can put up the rainbow? What about that? When are you guys going to decide how much face hair a guy can have and still go pee in the girls' bathroom with the girls? See, these things aren't asked. Oh, well, they might be, but they aren't answered.
No, that's
Okay.
true. They aren't answered as far as it. And yes, that's rainbow theology. That's our way of the alphabet club. So a lot of people they've been in the chat, and I know you're familiar. We talked on Unscrambled Minds, and we've had a lot of conversations over the years about it. But a lot of people want to know about the Choctaw side and how you I know you were saying as far as you have African on one side, you have Choctaw on another. How do you blend that and culturally? And do you claim your Choctaw side? Do you feel pride in that as far as it is?
Yes, I feel pride in that. We kicked some ass and we took some scalps, cut some throats, tomahawked some folks, shot some folk with arrows and rifles. Yes, of course, that's a warrior culture. Yes, I take pride in that. I also take pride in my Yoruba ancestry too. Of course I do. So why do I have to cut both off? I have components of each in me. And by the way, uh, we kick ass. Ain't no punk stuff in there. And by the way, nobody in my family needed to be emancipated by the Emancipation Proclamation nor by the 13th Amendment. They all got free, such as needed to get free. So, in
So
other
they were
words,
all free before 1865.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And like my Choctaw grandmother used to say, oh, you colored, you get mad at what the white folk do to you. We take a scalp and nail it on the lodgepole and we laugh. See the difference?
When you were saying it's your great grandmother that's Choctaw and your great
And grandmother.
grandfather and grandmother, yes. And
My
that
grandmother
said
was
as far as
Choctaw.
his
My
father came from
great,
Africa. Did they ever mention the one that came from Africa ever mention Yoruba or the part of
yeah.
Africa
I mean, my
or
grandfather
anything
was
like that?
born in 18, my grandfather, maternal grandfather, was born in 1850. That's 11 years before the Civil War started. I knew him. In fact, I was sitting on his bedside when he died. He made it to over 100 and he left me his journal. I got it when I was a lawyer from his lawyer. I was in my 30s. It's very interesting. My first ex burned it out of vindictiveness, but I memorized it. And his father was Yoruba. Um, this thing with the woman king, that was nonsense. The Dahomians had an interesting political system. They had two brothers who were blood kin brothers. So rather than killing each other, so one of them could be the high chief, they decided to split it. And they had a nice idea about keeping the nobility from trying to rise up in power. So they wouldn't let the nobility of the tribe be people who would hold office or important offices or positions. They had to be commoners, but there was a requirement. Each commoner, male, who held an important position had to have a female in the palace as part of one high chief's sereglo or harem or the other. And if that guy did something against the interest of the tribal hierarchy, his female relative was sacrificed. And the other thing was is they gave the female relative veto power over whatever her male relative was doing for the hierarchy. So it was an interesting thing. They got a lot of money from the Dutch and the English to finance what they did. So I don't buy that BS from a woman king. And the warrior ethic was always taught to me and everybody in my family, and also on the other side as well. So it was what it was.
But you said
Grandfather,
Dutch had a lot to do with the area as well. Did your grandfather talk about the Dutch ties to the area and how that
yeah,
affected
he
and what?
did. He was an interesting individual. He and Alex Haley's grandfather practiced medicine together in Jackson, Tennessee. But before he got into medical practice, he and two uncles of mine murdered two deputy sheriffs who they thought had something to do with lynching another uncle. And that was the thing. You're supposed to be a man. Everything I got taught growing up, mother, aunts, uncle, on both sides, be a man. A man does this, man does that. Great young man. Men don't do that, young fellows. You just don't do that. That's the way a man does it. See, like I heard this many times an hour all day long. So it was a thing. Stand up even if it means your death. There are worse things than dying. And I got told often between the time you're born and the time you die is not long at all. And the interesting thing in modern terminology is you get close to the end, it's like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it runs out. But the more deeply you think back on your life. So it'd be good to sit back in your rocking chair and be able to smile about what you've done rather than being filled with regrets, particularly those because you didn't do the manly thing and you ran or you shirked your responsibility to stand up for something. See, people I know, a lot of them died violently, not for some stupid foolishness down in the hood, but for the right kind of things. Or they put themselves in harm's way for the benefit of others. Uh, you don't see any daylight at the end of your tunnel, then you can welcome hero status, uh, cleaning out the fire breathing Gila monsters that are setting flame to the tunnel and filling it with smoke so your people that you owe something to as an obligation can get to the end of the tunnel to the daylight and you'll be looked at as a hero. Now, I don't need to have a question. I'm me. First off, I'm me. Second off, I'm human. Third, I'm a masculine human. And fourth, I get into all of that about the ethnic stuff is just a definition. It's like I had a Bentley. Was it supposed to be black with a beige interior or a dark metallic blue with a beige interior? The color didn't make any difference. It was a Bentley. That's what counted. And see, the way we play this color thing is it's about the color black, but are you talking about a Bentley, a Rolls Royce, a Porsche, a Ferrari, or a Volkswagen? And for the way the woke folk play it, the color is more important than the car. And it doesn't work that way in life.
No, doesn't. Well, I thank you so much for coming. I know it's almost like 2 hours and 30 minutes, and I don't want to keep you all night. Thank you so much for everything that you were going back and forth about and just all this information that you were able to give us tonight. I do have one more question in leading us off, and
Go ahead.
yes, with us talking about foundational Black America, and you said, we'd be better off with going with the MAGA party that's building from the ground up, or
Well,
taking back the
it's
Black
money.
Caucus.
It's
Mhm.
money. And if you want to get the idea, politics statesmanship, diplomacy is about allies and cooperation. Take a picture out of a history book, fix it in your mind. There sits Joe Stalin, there sits Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and there sits Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill represents the country that Franklin Delano Roosevelt's ancestors had a revolution against, and Joe Stalin represents a country that the other two are worrying about starting a revolution in their countries, but they're all allies to get rid of Adolf, Tojo, and Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. And they won. And after that, shortly after that, they got back to being at each other's throats for the next 40 some years. So you can have alliances. Remember, Great Britain was trying to oppress the American colonies in North America. And the North Americans committed treason and seceded from Great Britain, and they won the first modern revolution and established the principles of asymmetric or guerrilla warfare.
So when they say what we should use as leverage, a lot of people say we need to use voting as leverage. Say we're not going to vote for a particular individual unless they do this, and that. Or we should use money as a leverage, boycotting. What do you say our greatest power to use as a leverage currently,
You just
especially
touched
while
on it.
Trump is
That's it.
voting or money or both?
Voting. Look. Air Jordan athletic shoes, right? Next time you're in a Nike store, pick one up and look at the label. It says made in Hanoi, Vietnam. Not just Vietnam, but Hanoi, where the Hanoi Hilton, the penitentiary was that held a lot of black soldiers, white soldiers, all kinds of American soldiers in as prisoners of war. 7 years, 52,000 Americans dead, and a lot more wounded. For what? So they could make Air Jordan athletic shoes in Hanoi, Vietnam. Now, here's where it goes. Michael Jordan, good businessman, fortuitous person who was in the right place, right time, with the right talent for the right purposes. He makes more in royalties from Nike than Nike pays the workers who make those tennis shoes. That's an example of what went wrong with our whole tariff manufacturing free trade situation. American manufacturers go overseas, set up factories over there, exploit the labor market over there for low wages, and come back and sell enormously overpriced merchandise. There is substantially no difference between a Nike tennis shoe or athletic shoe at their high level and one that's got Michael Jordan's image on it and his name on it, except the name. But one's $280 and the other one's $240, and most of the people wearing them will never in their lives put them to the proper use because they're not pro basketball players. And they are not making what the star players in the NBA make. And let's look at the NBA as a microcosm for the whole United States of America. In my lifetime, one of the most racist institutions in existence in this country was the National Basketball Association. The first somebody to integrate it was Don Barksdale. Don Barksdale didn't even play basketball in high school or college. He played football at UCLA and he ran track, the high hurdles, but he was a natural athlete. So the Lakers hired him as the first black man to play in the NBA. In the same backfield, we had an interesting quarterback that had such a negative reaction from other teams that UCLA changed the name from quarterback to tailback. That was Kenny Washington. He was the first black man to play in the NFL. The Rams hired him, 1946. And we had the star halfback in the UCLA backfield. His name was Jackie Robinson. He also ran track and held the American record in the 100-yard dash and the 220-yard dash. He never played baseball, but he wound up being the first black to play in the major leagues with the Dodgers, all of which happen to be in LA now, the Dodgers, Lakers, and the Rams. So it's interesting that the NBA, which was just absolutely completely racist in its structure, nature, officiating, and character, becomes something now where when you think of an NBA player, you don't think a white guy, you think a black guy. Michael Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, you know, Magic Johnson, the GOAT, classmate of mine I went to school with, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We knew him as Big Lou Alcindor, who, by the way, is an interesting historian. He wrote about Jackie Robinson and the 761st Armored Battalion, which was in continuous combat longer than any other tank unit in World War II. They called them Patton's Panthers, and they came up with the image that the Black Panther Party wound up adopting through the, what was it, Deacons for Defense and Justice in Loudoun County, Louisiana, some of whom had been in the 761st Armored Battalion, aka Patton's Panthers. So, yeah, there's all kinds of interesting stuff in here. So if the NBA can morph from being one of the most racist institutions in America to something to perceive to be one of the blackest, at least in terms of the players. And as far as the people talking about, we need a new constitution, is good. No, be kind of hard to come up with a better instrument. Back to the NBA again, the NBA rule book has not changed substantially since 1946 when the Lakers hired Don Barksdale.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with Trump, what do you see being the most influential thing he's going to do in these next 4 years in this particular presidency?
Well, let me tell you what he's doing. The country is constipated and it needs an enema and it needs a laxative. He's administering the laxative and about to stick the enema up the country's butt. And when that happens, the stuff will fly and it will smell bad and a lot of people will get upset. But it needs to be done. We have let this country slip a long way over the last half century where we have glorified dysfunction.
That I definitely agree with. Well, thank you again, Judge Joe Brown. Thank you, everybody, for coming through and listening. Bad Saint, thank you. Trip, Darius, Jeremiah, Milestones, David. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We definitely gonna have to do a round two, Judge Joe Brown, with everything that's going on. I'm sure we'll have some new people, maybe some Democrats going to jail. I don't know. Or the follow up with
Somebody's
Matthew.
going to do some time. I see this in the back of my mind. Yeah. See, that was my business for a long time, was crime. And I can see the handwriting on the wall.
Yes, the
Anyway,
writing on the wall is there.
and by
Thank
the way,
you.
you
Thank
see
you so
this
much for
here?
coming in.
If you want some
Yes, barbecue
excellent
sauce.
barbecue, yeah, you can get it. You can order it on Amazon. Judge Joe Brown barbecue products. And we have a website, jjbbbq.com, Judge Joe Brown Barbecue. Go there, and we have more products than you can get through Amazon. And Tiffany Haddish is one of the sponsors and co-chef on this whole thing. Chef Damon is one of Beyonce's personal chefs. He's a real nice guy, and he runs a place, if you're in Los Angeles, called Dee's Original Takeout Grill on the corner of 79th and Western down in the LA hood, not far from where I grew up.
And they're using your barbecue sauce. I had to get it. I had to get some. Let's see.
You'll like it. I came up with the old time version. He niced it up so you can get it in Sprouts and Whole Foods now, and it's good for you. Anyway, I'm out of here. Have some more
Thank
trouble to cause.
Yes. And we'll get into more trouble in the future. Thank you again.
You're quite welcome.
So, everybody, I'm getting the link. I'm going to put that in the chat for you guys. Judge Joe Brown barbecue sauce. Like he said, you can get that from Amazon as well or his website. Give me a second. And here it is on Amazon. So for sure, everybody go out and support. Get some of Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. It was good. I saw a lot of y'all in the chat like, what is he saying? But I'm familiar with Judge Joe Brown. He already knows how we are, that we're Indian and everything like that. He's never really agreed. So it's something I always know when talking to him. But I think he's very interesting in some of the stuff he said. And you got to read between the lines. Like he said, we're African, but he don't see African doing anything, African descent helping us at all. So it's like, what's the purpose? But yeah, so I'm not seeing the JJBBQ, but y'all check it out as far as on Amazon. He definitely dropped some jewels, yes, that we can read between the lines. So that's why I like having him on. And I thank everybody that came out and was listening. I think I saw DZ, Big Chief in the chat, Aton, of course. Let's see. I think I already said Darius, Iceberg. Thank you for coming out. Zay, thank you for coming out. But I'm going to go ahead and close this one now. Hey, Mike. And we'll be looking forward to it again the next time we have Judge Joe Brown on. Let me know some questions or some things y'all want to know. We can definitely get that in. And any kind of suggestions or things y'all want to see in the future, be sure to leave a comment. Comments definitely help, and we can definitely build for what y'all want to see. So thank you guys, and you have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Navi. Thank you for coming through. Thank you. Salute, Anthony, David, Jeremiah, of course. Thank you. And one day you're going to have to come out of retirement, Jeremiah. But peace, guys. Have a